Yo, what's up? It's Paulo. Welcome to another episode of the FMA Dumpster Fire podcast. As per usual, these are unscripted, uncensored, and for the most part, unscheduled. So I hope you join me today. I will be with the CEO of FMA, none other than Dean Franco. But first, we got to rock the dopest intro to any FMA podcast in the history of mankind.
Get the fuck out of bed, bitch. Go.
You're finished. No.
Get up. Never got no. Gotta wake up, bitch. Get up.
Oh.
Get up. Get up.
Is this the beginning of the end of FMA discussion? The people want to know. In fact, I came up with this title, and the person who I'm about to interview had no idea that was going to be the title. But here he is, Dean Franco.
The beginning. Oh my God. It's like, it almost like, like this sad state of affairs. Oh my God, it's going to be this sad discussion. And
well, you didn't know this was going to be the topic, and it's not necessarily the topic.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be going other places.
Yeah, but I do know that you being the CEO of Filipino Martial Arts and running a thing like FMA Discussion, bro.
What did I sign up for?
What did you sign up for? Should we sandwich this? Because, like in corporate world, when you want to give somebody criticism, you always sandwich it between the two good things. So let's start with some positives. What were some good, important lessons you learned from running FMA Discussion?
Oh, boy. Well, the positive was that, in fact, there was a void of coverage for FMA systems, and that's kind of what I wanted to fulfill. If you recall, I hit like pre-COVID. So late fall 2019, there wasn't really anybody covering FMA notables. You're not just your masters, but people that were significant in our community, and all that. And it was kind of void. Because if you look at like FMA Digest and stuff like that, Steve, who was, great covering all that, but he was more in the magazine online format. There was nobody interviewing our all-time greats. And so the positives that initially covering a void. The other thing was getting to some of these folks before they passed on. And what's really sad is two of them have passed on, Felix Valencia and Renee Latosa. Now, imagine if they weren't able to be interviewed and all that. And I'm not saying they haven't been, but, so again, getting folks before a lot of these guys are passed off. So that's another positive. The other is, there's a few. I don't know how many you want, but just getting to know people. Like, matter of fact, like I wouldn't have gotten to know you if I didn't do this podcast, right? The people I've gotten to know and get acquainted with and want to meet, and some of them I've been fortunate enough to have met. But the list is huge that I would like to finally meet, and so that's been nice. Really getting just wonderful people exposed to.
Yeah. Let me address something real quick. First of all, I disagree with you that we wouldn't have met otherwise. I think the universe would have conspired to.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. I think that.
We are kindred souls. And I think we were lovers in a previous life. And so I'm just kidding. But listen, Dean, you're absolutely right. there was nothing like FMA discussion. I mean, there were certain groups and certain forums that expressed a preference,
and niche, you know.
Yeah, right. And it's not that FMA discussion doesn't have recurring, guests like myself, right? Which can be identified as, oh, Dean's biased towards Paulo.
We're going to get into that.
No, what I'm trying to say is that FMA discussion actually did fill that void, because despite the fact that there are other FMA channels out there that are much bigger in subscribership and views than FMA discussion, those are typically focused on one system, one instructor, one way of thinking. And even some of the FMA forums in existence are more or less like a gossip girl group of the same freaking people, just with their inside jokes. And and there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with having private groups, there's nothing wrong with having public groups, even if at the core of it is really like a group of gossip girls just doing their own thing. FMA discussion was different, right? You sought to interview, in their own words, luminaries from all different systems and people who were lesser known but came highly recommended. So I think that's an incredible contribution. And I think it's because of you specifically as the host made people feel welcome to that, because you have this sort of like a reluctant leader almost. You do a great job at leading it, but you do it with a slight air of reluctancy, and I think that comes from your humility and authenticity. And people, it resonated with people, and they didn't feel threatened by your presence, because you always found a way to find the positive in things. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's so funny when you bring these things up. Like in the beginning, I tell folks, like, I really didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just knew there was a void. I had a genuine interest to fill this void. I was motivated. I brought who I am to the table, and they're either going to embrace it, they're going to like me, or they're not. And in conjunction with that, in the landscape of the interview world, then we look at the group. And so I wanted a matching, like what took place in a group. I wanted to be parallel, so there weren't two different worlds. Like, oh my God, this group's a mess. You can do whatever you want in there. But then you see me in the interviews, and it's like, so I wanted congruency as far as the behavior, how I portrayed myself,
right?
My expectations. And so I can honestly say, I think that was achieved, and it's still being. I'm using past tense. Jesus. So I think that's been achieved and continues to be achieved. Like one of the wonderful things is when you get feedback from folks who post in a group, like, oh my God, you can post here, and you don't have to worry about getting attacked or ridiculed and this and that. And that's what I wanted, because much when you were talking about, a lot of these groups they're terrible. Like you said, there's like a brat pack, like a high school. They just, they say they have moderators, but nobody's moderating. I mean, it's just like a free for all,
Yeah. And what I particularly like that started happening with FMA discussion is that, man, you know how it is in martial arts or in grade 10 high school with a bunch of teenagers. It's the same kind of dynamic where, hey, if you and I are going to be friends, you can't be friends with that person.
Oh God.
Which is a sign of, like, first of all, I think FMA discussion is such a valuable asset to any system for their master lineage holder to be on the show to express in their own words what the system is about. And for somebody to say, for example, well, I don't want to go on that show because Dean Franco interviewed that Cabales guy or that Rubio guy or that Cairo guy or that guy from Kikiti Tertia. So it's this kind of like shallow sophomoric behavior that is actually detrimental to the growth of a system. Have you had this where it's like, oh, I don't want to go on your show because...
Oh yeah, and that's the thing too. I mean, there's a lot of drama that I could have certainly been taken part of, participated in it, showed it in the group by like taking stuff, extracting stuff from Facebook Messenger, putting into the group, and like if I really was into that world, I can't tell you how many times I've diffused and just buried stuff to completely avoid that. But to answer your question, absolutely. Yeah, there's been folks, well, you've had him on and I'm not sure. And that, in the beginning, I didn't experience that because like there's been like through this journey that started 2019 to now, like there's been degrees of like far as the volatility and the drama and the politics. Like the first year was like, man, this is kind of easy. Everybody seems happy go lucky. There's no negativity. Second year, some stuff coming in. Third year, man, it's on. This year,
that vaccine, it kind of lost its efficacy, and all of a sudden we're back to the same viral.
and I'm just like, holy crap. And this year, I put out more fires this year than any other year. And I think it's just a tribute to that. We've got more, obviously, we're pretty exposed. People know about us. And, some people are not going to be happy with that. And they're going to want to just cause drama. It could be jealousy. It could be not liking who you had on, because you got to remember something. I mean, we're into now. Well, you and my pal tomorrow is going to be episode 428. So in a couple of years, I mean, I wasn't even at like 200. So there wasn't enough there yet. You know what I mean? And then I did a couple of theme episodes on systems. Most enjoyed them. Some were kind of, bang on the side of the fence. Hey, you want me to share this to the group?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
I hope that helps with the answer. I am sharing it.
I honestly forgot the question. What was my question? Oh yeah. So here's the thing. Here's what I wanted to say. This is why you're putting out fires, Dean. This is why when somebody has a problem with somebody else, they go to Daddy Dean because you attract that. Daddy Dean. Yeah, you attract that energy, bro, and that's a compliment, right? It's not an indictment or a criticism of you, right? When somebody feels like they can go to you because you're the central hub of this crooked, multi-spoked wheel, they feel like they can go to you. And you know how it is in Filipino martial arts. One instructor doesn't speak with another instructor, but they got something to say about each other. So they go through Daddy Dean, and then you're in the middle. You're caught in the middle, right? But listen, bro, I'll give you some advice. I've been through this doing the whole Funker tactical thing. One time I was in SHOT Show managing a team of 40 people from snipers, Krav Maga, Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai guys, combatives guys. They all had something to say about each other. Okay? They liked each other. Some of them were like brothers, but they all had something to say. And because I was central to that multi-spoke wheel,
you were
I was the guy that they came to, and I felt like it was my job to maintain peace, so that the team can get along and be a happy family. Well, that didn't work out. I'm friends with most of the people that I've associated with in the past, but I've also come to realize that it's not my job to keep the family together, and it's not your job to settle disputes or be the mediator for nonsense, bullshit, FMA bickering.
Yeah.
It's not your job. It's what you signed up for.
No.
You do have that energy. Everybody wants to talk to Dad.
And the thing is, it's so funny. That came, it's like, it's not like I noticed that coming. It just kind of snuck in there. And before you know it, you're playing this role that you're doing, and you don't even know how you got there. You just know you're doing it now, and you're starting to do it more. Now you're doing it more. It's now in association with you that you're doing it because you feel you have to do it. It's so weird how that manifests. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, didn't know how I got here. Okay, I'm here. I'm continuing to do this. I didn't ask to do this. I didn't sign up for this. And yeah, that's a good point that nobody else has brought up. And so I made a concerted effort to definitely bring circles together and all that. I'm not saying I achieved that hard with 100%, hardly.
You
I could
tried
definitely
it.
say
I
though.
think you achieved it to a
I
greater
think,
degree of success than most have.
yeah, I think that's fair. I think the reason being is I think people saw the genuineness of me
Yes.
trying to bring folks together, like whether it was a theme episodes in KI or Modern Niece or what have you, or just in general. Yeah, I think, but much to your point, and here's the thing too, you know, this community can be, we all say, okay, the FMA community, it can be tough on you, you got to watch out, but it goes beyond that. The FMA community too is sometimes it's not the most appreciative community, and it's because
Oh,
he's man, like, who does he think he is doing all this and all that, and it's like, well, first of all, I didn't see any of you jumping up to there to start interviewing people. I didn't see anybody you coming to form a group where like-minded folks can come in there and share their stuff and without being ridiculed and all that. Like I didn't see you trying to beat me to the race to do that. You know what I mean? It's such a weird dynamic.
it's super weird. And you know what? At the point where when I contacted you and I really saw something special in what was brewing,
Mm.
who you were. So I wanted to throw my support towards that. But there were others. I'm constantly, whether or not people want to believe this, I want all of FMA, all right, to succeed. I want success for all of us, right?
Yeah.
It's just that sometimes my way of doing things doesn't resonate well with people, and sometimes it just downright offends them. But I wanted to talk about this, which is this thin veil of civility in
Mm.
FMA, right? It's a thin veil, and it gets peeled back whenever somebody has a disagreement with another person. It gets peeled back when word gets around that a guy you thought was your friend was talking crap behind your back. I experience it
Mm.
all the time.
I was gonna say you and all the worlds you've been in, you've had to.
Yes. I have a ton of frenemies in the Filipino martial arts,
Yeah.
and I know of them, but I respect that dynamic, right? There are a few people that I'm actually close to.
Yeah.
I have a lot of colleagues, and maybe some of those people feel like I don't know, but I know where I stand with people, right? I know when somebody wants something from me.
Yeah.
Uh, I know when it's a genuine relationship, and typically that means we've communicated a lot in private or we've seen each other. But everyone's got frenemies in Filipino martial arts, and this thin veil of civility.
Mm.
My rejection of it is kind of what gets me into trouble, Dean. So, like, I was telling you off camera earlier. I said that, hey, whenever I praise somebody or a compliment
Mhm.
somebody, right? Like I see a great drill that I've never
Yeah.
seen before, I will just and my mind will just go, this is why I think this is great. I think it's great that you're doing that. I can tell by the way that your students move that they're benefiting
Yeah.
from this drill. So this praise, this quote recognition from me is really just me as an instructor, me as a student going, I find value in that practice.
Right. And that particular thing that you're being
That
shown.
particular
Yeah.
thing. That's valuable. And I would like to share that with as many people as possible.
Right.
Okay. So when that happens, that person automatically thinks we're best buddies and that I'm going to love everything they do.
Ah.
So then here's what happens. I see something that they do that I go, same energy, right? Same energy. I go, you know what? I don't think that's a valuable practice because it does A, B, and C and it contradicts, X, Y, Z. And
Mm.
so all of a sudden they're shocked. They're like, all of a sudden they see it as like me attacking them or that I've betrayed what they thought was a friendship. Whereas,
Right.
bro, I was just commenting on something that I found valuable and something that I found perhaps less valuable or I don't understand.
Yeah.
But when somebody gets praised in this FMA world, because of the nature of the beast, they automatically feel like, oh, we're going to be allies forever. And then they they fall out of favor because
Yeah.
they didn't expect me to.
Yeah. And I think that comes with the higher you are, or I should say status quo. You know, are you the person, are you one of the people carrying the ball right now in the community? You gotta remember something. They go after the ball carrier. You're carrying the ball. I'm carrying the ball. You know, Burton one time, I'm gonna give a little story about Burton, and then I'm gonna parallel off what you were just talking about. And so I got on a call with Burton. He wanted to show me some stuff. And you could just see on my face, I'm just kind of worn down and just, you know. And he goes, generally, what's wrong? So I kind of, in short, kind of told him. And he goes, same thing happened to me in the 90s when I was Dan's head guy and I was getting all the seminar work and this and that. And Dan noticed I was down, asked me the same question. And he says, yep, they go after the ball carrier and you're carrying the ball. And so for folks like that, I'm not surprised now we're going to turn around full circle to you, is because you have this status. So God, Paulo Rubio, man, he liked my stuff and this and that. And so they're going to take that and they're going to freaking run with it. So now they're going to keep like there. And then if you go to disappoint, they're going to be like, man, what do you mean? You like this over here? Why you? But again, the whole thing, right? It's like, you like everything I do. That would be uncanny, and that would be just weird that you would like everything I do. Come on.
Yeah, we have discussion. I tell you, like certain things you practice and believe in.
Yeah.
I just be like, no, I don't agree with that. Dean.
Yeah, I know. Like I know your opinion. I'm a Deuce and Piper, and I totally respect it because I don't like everything there either that goes on in those worlds. Right. So I totally get where you're coming from. But I'm being like, man, Paulo, he likes the channel, but he doesn't like stuff that I do over here, and
yeah. And look, the thing is, look. The thing is, I don't because we have this relationship, right? Like I don't, for example, you and Burton versus me and my group about outside 2-on-1 versus inside 2-on-1. We don't see that as, being insulting to each other's integrity or intelligence. It's an ongoing conversation. I find inside 2-on-1 natural acquisition. And so therefore you think that you should fight from that position. I think that we should transition to a more favorable position that you don't think is even a more favorable. And so we have these arguments, and it's fine. Look, I hate Pikiti Tersha. Like I hate it, but I love it,
Yeah.
And so
it's funny you mentioned that because I'm kind of the same way with the KI right now. It's like I love the art. I can't stand everything though that comes with it.
And this kind of philosophy, this kind of approach to life is, for the most part, it's changing. It is in direct contradiction to how Filipino martial arts communities currently engage and interact with one another, right? We talk about this thin veil of civility. I don't know, man. It's just, maybe it's part of Filipino culture, right? Like you call somebody sir, or you add that po, oh sige po, or no problem po, kind of honorific. But meanwhile, it's like we're the same age, we're the same rank. What is this thin veil of civility nonsense, calling each other sir and blah blah blah? It's like, listen, I disagree with that concept. This is why I believe so, and you disagree with me, and this is why you believe so, right? We ought to be able to have that discussion openly if we want, privately if we prefer. But it really shouldn't affect like the nature of how we want to support one another. But people don't take that.
Because he didn't agree with me on this and he's that, so that means he must not agree with me on everything else, and I'm going to now remove myself from him. I know it's just like here's the thing too. You know what? Really, you're absolutely right by everything you just spoke on. But when you think about it, like, okay, what is the root of this? What is one of the common denominators? And the thing is that there is kind of, they didn't grab the id, or there is a maturity aspect. I'm sorry. And here it is, we're in this realm of martial arts, this code of respect and dignity and that. And when you look at it, and when you see people act like this, they're so far removed from that. There actually becomes hypocritical when they start throwing those terms around. Like here, my pet peeve. Okay, we just talked about this before. So you're in a group, you're in a Facebook Messenger group, and you might not be the catalyst that brings up certain people and talks about them, but you're part of that group. You know what? You're just as bad. Like you're, you know what I mean? When you're part of a nucleus that just talks about people, but there's nothing positive about problem solving, doesn't be part of the solution. Matter of fact, doesn't even contribute to the overall community, but you're part of this messenger group and there. But yet you're respectful because you're a martial artist, all that. No, you're a piece of, you know what? You're part of a piece of crap. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, you might get a different version of Dean Franco today. I don't know.
He's Dean. Hey, as long as it's authentic, Dean, right? I think that's why we all love
that drives me nuts. Like this person was telling me this. Oh yeah, I'm part of the group, but I'm just kind of neutral. And I'm thinking, how are you neutral? You're in this disease of a group that talks about people that you're basically what you're sharing with me, because I'm obviously not part of this group, and nor do I want to be. But you're part of this and that, and what drives me nuts is they're so hypocritical because they do nothing for the growth or the better community. It's like their own little thing here, and they're like, and they're going to, I guess crab mentality, I guess is appropriate. I don't know. There's my rant, or one of my rants.
Here's the thing about those little gossip girl groups, and they know who they are.
Are they?
And to some degree, it's a part of all of us, I suppose, to some degree. But there are some people in FMA, you know who you are, who just that's their thing, man. And what there's a purposeful ignorance among members of these kinds of FMA gossip girls, like I like to call them, is that they don't think that they gossip about each other, but they do.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this like closed group we'll call, we'll just throw out some random names. No, I'm not going to do that. I was going to name actual names and pretend it's random. They know who they are, right? So they have like their core members, these gossip girls, and then they have their fringe members who think they can just dip in and dip out, and that they're neutral and that they're ambassadors and peacekeepers. Yeah. That's what they think. But what they don't actually know, or that they're willfully ignorant about, is that within that gossip girl group, they gossip about each other. And I hear about it.
It doesn't surprise me, because when the person's not there, how come he's not here today? What is he? I mean, whatever goes on, the dynamic. To me, it's like, okay, I could choose how I'm going to spend my time. Okay, you know what, man, I got a free hour and a half right now, uninterrupted. I can go join this Facebook group and we're going to talk about whatever, or I can go refine my non-telegraphic strike to the eye. I mean, it's just, you know what I mean? It's just like. But so that, these people think, well, we're dedicated to the craft and to the art. Really? What part of it?
No. And the thing is, like, look, let me clarify something. When I say that we all sort of participate in this kind of, gossipy type talk, I think the differentiating factor is that I talk to that person directly, right? And I say, look, man, I heard some shit, or, hey, I really don't like that thing. Like, we communicate directly. Because it's just the nature of human relationships. There's going to be common friends, mutual friends, bridges, and things like that. And we can confide in them. But again, certain FMA factions, man, I feel like this thin veil of civility, it's so fragile. Like, some of the most meaningful relationships and friendships that I have in Filipino martial arts have come from the resolution of disagreements. Doing it like men.
Yeah.
Dealing with it properly.
Right. But here's the thing, though. You just hit on something. I say generally speaking, the people that we are identifying without identifying them, generally speaking, and we kind of talked to this, what don't you ever see them put on or go do?
You never see them actually test their shit.
You never see him
no,
with a helmet on. You never
never.
see him go through adversity, failures. And so when people want to
Nope.
call me out, I got tons of it. You want to see me fail in life? You want to see? Oh, okay, which one? Which one you want to see? But all these guys, much to your like, right? They're typically, I say typically because I don't want to throw them under one umbrella, but generally and typically speaking, these are guys who you don't see get dirty. Now they'll show you their flow. They'll show you somebody feeding them. They'll show you fooling around at Bobby's camp or this or that, and they're all this and that, but they're not. And that's just it. Just this is really healthy for me. So I gotta thank you for bringing me on
You're welcome,
because
Dean.
this is stuff I wanted to say and let go, but I'm trying to be like, all right, I'm gonna still be the ambassador. You know what I mean? But like I'm like just so dumb those people because they're hypocrites. They're hypocrites.
And I think you need to have a sit down with your wife and do a bit of reflection. And she's gonna tell you the same thing. All right, Dean, is that you don't owe it to any of these people to be their conflict resolution.
She tells me, man, like, why are you still doing? Why her mindset right now is why are you still serving this community? That's her. That's her thing. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So, I mean, is this the beginning of the end of FMA discussion?
Okay, this is a fantastic question, and I'm not going to dodge it because I can go answer this like several ways and kind of address it, but not really. So, okay, yes, and I'll tell you why. Okay. Reason being is several reasons. One, I really have a bunch of other stuff to work on, and what happened was I had 2 weeks there where I was really getting a lot of stuff done. The guy said they were going to do this and they're going to do that, and for 2 weeks it was wonderful. That collapsed. That lasted 2 freaking weeks. But the taste of that was like really nice. The problem is when I had that, there were some people lined up to be interviewed. And when I say I'm going to interview, I don't want to disappoint and cancel. So naturally, I'm like back in full swing. And I'm not really enjoying it, to be honest with you. There's certain subject matters that are people I really enjoy and all that. But if it's bringing somebody on that it's a system that I already heavily covered, or it's not going to be a learning curve for me, I'm tending to really just not want to do those. Like I just don't, because it's just like as far as my time. So back to the question. Yeah, now when is that end? That I don't honestly have an answer for it, but I think it's fair to say that yes, I think this is probably beginning now. And I'm being completely transparent here. I met with Phil and Tom a couple days ago, and I said, "Look, guys, numbers are down. We've interviewed pretty much, like, gosh, with the exception of a few big names, but we pretty much got everybody." I go, "Yeah, we can keep going, but it's really, I don't know if we're going to be able to basically." We're not going to get to the old numbers because based on who we've already done. I mean, it's just a simple fact. You know what I mean? Yes, we reinvented ourselves as far as theme episodes, equip bits, and etc. But you, like anything else, like at some point you're going to max out. And I never wanted this to be a Denny thing. Like I got to keep doing this because this I'm associated with FMA Discussion and all this and like that was never my goal in the beginning. It was never, Does that answer help?
Yes, it does. But I have some things to say about that, of course.
Oh, okay. I'm ready.
Number one.
Yeah.
You felt like you needed to, reinvent and innovate and bring in all of these other moderators to do all of these other interviews based on the fact that there was a higher demand for these people to be interviewed, right?
That's
you
fair.
didn't need to do all that. You didn't need all of these.
That's a whole nother man.
And guys, you guys know this, right? Like I respect Tom and Brian and Martin at one point, right? But I'll be honest. I'll be perfectly honest. I can't watch their episodes, bro. I like watching. First of all, I don't watch FMA discussion when it's not live.
Yeah,
Even
it's hard. I don't either.
I don't even want to.
couldn't do it.
I have never. I don't think I've ever watched a
I
single
couldn't
episode.
listen to myself for over an hour and a half.
Right. When it's not live, I don't know. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
I think when you do an FMA discussion episode and it's not live, the residual, perhaps lasting, more important benefit is that that's a documentation of that instructor's mind intentions, right? It's kind of like a time capsule. So I'm not saying it's not important. I just don't find it entertaining at all to watch when it's not live. I love the live dynamic.
I agree.
Okay? Yeah. But it's also, you're the guy that we want interviewing those people. And just because there's a lineup of people who want to be interviewed by FMA discussion, it doesn't mean you got to expand the restaurant and hire more wait staff. You just be like, hey, you got to wait. You got to wait when Dean Franco can do it and wants to do it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm just being completely
honest. No, you know what happened? You know why they were brought aboard initially? So when the group, here's what happened.
No offense, guys. No offense. Eh? Like, so I just want to make sure this is clear. No offense to Brian. No offense to Martin. No offense to Julius. No offense to Tom. Did you have any other?
Yeah, no, understood. So what happened was when the group got to 3,000, there was like, I'm not so sure if the number had anything to do with it or just dynamics, but when it got to 3,000, it became overwhelming. Like I was really putting out a lot of fires. It just started. So in other words, I didn't have rules in the beginning because I thought, hey, folks will.
These Filipino martial artists were good along.
They'll act accordingly and they're going to act like adults, right? And then you find out 100% otherwise that's not the case. So it was really getting over. Like I'm in there and I'm just miserable. I'm just putting out fires, doing interviews in here, like just spending like just mindless hours of just trying to bring things back there. And finally I'm saying like, man, I need a couple moderators because I simply can't do this by myself, monitoring all the threads that are coming in and there and that. So the reason why initially bringing some of those folks on was really due to the group dynamic. It wasn't really from the interviewing perspective, because then Julius was the first reason why I brought Julius on. He wanted to interview somebody and he asked me if it's okay. I'm like, of course it's okay. What? I mean, you don't need to ask me that. I'm like, matter of fact, I go use my platform. Yeah. And because he was actually watching the shows, he was like really active. So I appreciated that he was really watching. I said, look, just use my platform. So that kind of led into him interviewing is all that.
Yeah.
Then made Tom and that. So there's a couple reasons how that transpired. But my initial outlook was like, oh, I'm going to bring these guys on and they're going to do interviews. It just kind of happened,
I get it. So I get it from a perspective of somebody who is a fan of FMA discussion, but also somebody who runs or have run, continues to run multiple martial arts forums.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes on behalf of people, sometimes on its own. And I've had to switch moderators, right? Because
some time ago.
Yeah. I had a bunch of moderators. And the thing is, first impressions and specifically in forum environments, right?
Yeah.
People build up a reputation. A friend of mine, Mick Coop, coined the term that I love. And it's sort of like this forum confidence. You post something and it gets a ton of great interaction and people love your post. And so you just keep on posting more and more and more and more. And you kind of get this forum confidence. I'm making a contribution.
Yeah.
And it gets to people's heads, right? There's a psychology in like a group or team dynamics whereby each individual component of that group tends to overvalue their contribution to that group, right? So it's true.
That's a good point.
There's no offense to your moderators and the folks who have helped you out in the past, right? Yeah. But moderators, guest hosts, these are not permanent roles. And sometimes it just runs their course, right? Like Brian's got his own, shout out to the Fight House Talks podcast. Things didn't work out, so he created his own. And I have a great respect for that, right? Because he chose a side. He's like, okay, look, the relationship has run its course here. Yeah. I don't feel like this and that. I'm going to start my own thing.
Correct.
Tremendous respect for that, right? And I wish more people would do that so that they can kind of get a better appreciation for like, hey, it's not easy to build a community, right? It's not easy to build a following. It's not easy to be consistent.
Mhm.
This is why in my podcast, I have none of those things. Like I just do a podcast whenever I feel like it. I didn't know I was going to do a podcast with you today,
I
Dean.
know. We're like after doing a dry run with my pal. Oh, by the way, do you have time? Yeah, much to your point about that, I totally agree with you. Like when those guys came on, I never like I've said this like God, they need to stay with me indefinitely until I close up shop. Like that was hardly the case. I mean, like I definitely I could easily interview Burden once a month too, Phil, and have something to talk about. But much to your point, like I never expected like this is going to be infinite and they're going to be loyal. I mean, like anything else, people leave different companies to go work for another company. I mean, in my opinion, it's just how you do it. I think there's a way to do things, and if you cross, and to me, that's the key thing. It's not what, it's the how. You know what I mean? So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
How come our names are not popping up? Sorry, my ADD just kicked in.
No.
No. That makes perfect sense. But just remember, Dean, like I don't think you should be ending FMA discussion. I think you should be, and it's not even redefining FMA discussion. I think it's just getting back to your roots, right? You need to find joy in doing these interviews. You need to find a renewed purpose in doing these interviews, and you can't allow it to gain this life of its own whereby it actually controls you. And this is very easy.
And I can honestly say, I think that kind of occurred during COVID. Like, and I tell you, it's so funny. Like I was telling you before, like how these things just manifest, and you're not even seeing it. And before you know, you're sitting one day and you're like, how the hell did I get here? Like, like what transpired for me not to notice this sequence of events or this timeline to where this is just exponentially, but what you were saying, I think it did get a hold of me and kind of grew to where I felt like I had to do as much, I had to keep doing. And, but I think that's fair. Like right here, be more selective and then doing, I mean, which you can't argue that. I mean, that's right on. Yeah.
So, and here's the thing too, Dean, if I can give you a piece of advice.
Absolutely.
Right. These people are not entitled to be on FMA discussion.
Yeah, that's what I know. And you like this is where we like are yin and yang. Like I feel like, okay, they asked me, they really want to come on. All right, I'll make it happen, because that's just me. Like I have this
Sorry, no, that's not how you work.
I don't know, but I wish I could just be like, hey, you know what? I looked at your resume, and I got to be honest with you. You just don't have to do it. Like I just don't
cares about your crap.
That would be like just really hard for me to do. I don't know. I know, but I probably would benefit far personally if I was like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Here's the thing, Dean, because you did create something really important and influential, not just now, but for the future of Filipino martial arts, that people are going to gravitate towards that. Despite that fact, you don't owe FMA nothing. You don't owe any of these people nothing, right? These people who want to be on your show and want to showcase their craft and their art and their lineage, it's not like they don't have internet access and they don't know how to create a YouTube channel.
Right. I mean, right. Or put on their Facebook wall, what have you. Right.
This is a legitimate service that you're providing to people. You're giving them exposure, right? And here's the important thing, right? Here's the important thing as to why you shouldn't just accept any Tom, Dick, and Harry to be interviewed by the CEO of FMA, Dean Franco, right? Is because there is a body of work with FMA discussion. Yeah. That body of work includes the top names in Filipino martial arts today. And so who wouldn't want to get attached to that body of work?
And that's a whole other thing too. Like again, not to overuse, how did this manifest? How did I get here? Like, what happened? And during this timeline that I didn't see these things kind of evolve and this and that. And, one of the things you were talking about is like, where you're just bringing up like how you don't have to just bring anybody on or and that like that. But things just what happened was COVID. Like I was just doing 1 week before COVID. And then I'm thinking like, everything's shutting down, of course, all classes, we're all in this shutdown mode, right? So obviously out of boredom and just kind of trying to think about creating what I could do. Well, hey, why don't I do more than one episode a week? And that's kind of what Snow created, that momentum as far as doing, one more, just doing not just once a week, going into like twice a week. And there, and that was a byproduct of COVID in there. So, COVID really changed the scope of FMA discussion in several ways. One, bringing folks together to work together, because a lot of all that, let's look at FMA discussion, the group. We let people flourish in there. Like, hey, post your stuff in here, show what you're doing for your seminars, your online, joint seminars and all that. So COVID really did a lot of that time in there. And I think a lot of good came out of that. Networking, interaction among different groups and folks that perhaps normally maybe might not have worked together. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. You know what I've noticed recently happening on FMA discussion, going back to this whole forum confidence and the whole idea of exactly trying to peg down the power and influence of what you've created here, is that I've seen several people create a bunch of stellar posts, and then all of a sudden they're known in FMA, right? They begin to develop. It's really a breeding ground for reputation when it comes to meaningful contributions to FMA. There are some people recently on FMA discussion who share their YouTube videos, their TikTok accounts, their websites. I look at it. This is from my personal experience, right? So somebody would pop up, and I don't always comment these days, but somebody would pop up on FMA discussion and I'd be like, who the hell is this guy? Nice thumbnail. Cool. Okay. You got a YouTube channel. Nice. And then I would dig into them, and sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, this is shallow. Other times I found real legitimate talent that I would not have otherwise found had it not been for FMA discussion. That's from my perspective, right? Like I found different people.
Different. Okay.
And I think this is the case. Hopefully this is how people view FMA discussion, right? Yes, it is a platform and a stage to present yourself, but it's also, if you're any kind of, a talent scout or a white belt as a student, you ought to be looking at how people post, what they post, where they're directing you to. Give it an honest examination. Don't just be like quick on the keyboard. Well, nobody roof blocks like that. In my system, we call it an angle 3. Right? Dig deep into the people posting, because I creep on a whole lot of people in FMA discussion, and there are some phenomenal upcoming talent or people who have been building up their skill sets that you might have never heard.
Sometimes. Yeah, there's things I don't mention because I don't want to give I don't want people thinking like I did this all by myself. I didn't. Obviously, the other guys helped for sure. But I can honestly say though now, because sometimes I've always been reluctant to say like, well, hey, this is what we've done. This is what we've achieved. You know what I mean? I've always been kind of reluctant, but I know for a fact we've given people opportunity. We've put money in people's pockets.
Oh, for
we
sure.
Have put money in people's pocket. And I don't care if people don't like that or they don't agree with it. I can prove it, validate it. We've absolutely made people money,
For sure. And even if by virtue of just introducing a system that nobody's ever heard of, and then that person
they get a couple students,
right, right, or joins a Zoom session, right?
Yeah.
So it's incredibly valuable, and I think people ought not to lose sight that we should kind of be thankful that such a platform exists. many people have tried, and I think there should be offshoots and derivatives and copycats of FMA discussion. There absolutely should be.
There
And
kind of was, and I think there was a couple that started doing something. I think they kind of fell off, and I think people they realized was the amount of work that goes into it. You find out if it's something you really want to do or you don't do, and so a couple folks were doing it and kind of dropped off. But the thing is too is people don't understand. We've gone so much. I mean, look what we've done for women. I mean, we are the one source that's interviewed the most women in FMA world. Again, we've done more than any other interviewing platform. We've interviewed the most women. Again, I stress regarding FMA practitioners, female teachers. Nobody surpassed us in that because we made a concerted effort
right.
to do that. And the unknowns, we didn't just always get the well-known names. However, I've always said this, you get the big names on for sometimes to keep momentum or to regenerate momentum. That's just fact. Okay. So when people say like, well, they bring some people back on after once. Well, first of all, you shouldn't be talking, because you don't have a podcast and you don't know what it's like to keep momentum going. You have no idea. So when you say something like that, it's just stupid. You do that because sometimes folks want to see them come back because like somebody just brought in Bob Burton, for example, right? So you've been on more than once. I mean, I'm sorry, you do this because they might be so compelling and interesting, and they have such a variety of different subject matters they can talk about. Why would you not bring them back more than once? And why do I need to explain that to you? I mean,
well, because there are so many bubbles and circles in the Filipino martial arts.
Yeah.
Right. So like I've been on a few times, right? Yeah. Some people might go, we've seen enough of Rubio. I'm tired of seeing this guy's face and hearing his dumbass opinions. And I would agree with that person wholeheartedly, right? Like I am just too overexposed sometimes. I can't stand myself.
Yeah, but it's been a few months. I mean, you're coming on tomorrow with Maya Powell, but previous to tomorrow, I mean, it's been a few months and all that.
I know, but still, right? So what I mean is that there's a circle somewhere out there who goes, well, our grandmaster has been on 0 times, Paulo's been on 6. And so they talk to Daddy Dean about how this perceived bias. But here's the thing, guys, and for better or for worse, right, the market speaks for itself, right? If your grandmaster shows up and it's got 84 views, it's not an indication of their value. It's sort of an indication of the interest that they're generating in the open market. So FMA discussion isn't the magic pill. Your grandmaster needs to do if your grandmaster's intention is to propagate and preserve that system, they're going to need to do, and you're going to need to do a heck of a lot more work than just demanding that you're on FMA discussion, right? When Tuhan Bill McGrath goes on, or Tuhan Jared goes on, you know what I mean? When Romeo Macapagal goes on,
you're going to have a good
right? Tom Sotis goes on, Bert goes on. These are high view podcasts.
Absolutely.
Right? Because these people have done the work. They've been.
There you go. Exactly. And they've done the work in more than just one area, I might add too. You know what I mean? Like they might have written books. They might have a very strong social media platform. People might just really enjoy the hell to hear what they have to say, because what they say is generally truthful, inspiring. Not to say that your grandmaster could be incredibly physically talented, like there's art and all that, but can't convey a thought in a paragraph, and might have not the best social media presence. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the guy. And people, so to that circle that you referenced, I would basically mention to them what we just talked about, and ultimately I would just say, yes, I'll bring him on, and so, but we have not. I'm going to tell you something. We've pretty much, with every respect to every system and style. Matter of fact, like I've been wanting to get Tapado on for at least a couple of years now. Well, that's being achieved this Saturday. Sunday. I finally got somebody to come on regarding Tapado and all that. So, but my point, I bring that up because we pretty much have covered like everything. I mean, for the most part, and in that, as far as like systems, I should say. Again, as I mentioned before, there's a few big names for one reason or another that we have not been able to get on, unfortunately. But everything you mentioned about FMA Discussion, as far as what it's done for the overall community, opportunity, people have made money. And guess what? The person, Brian, I hate to be honest, where would Brian get the idea to do his own podcast if he was not part of FMA Discussion? Where would that come from? What? He would have, right? So we also build for people to go on their future, their experience from FMA Discussion, and go on to their future to do whatever. Nobody talks about that though. Why? Because it's not dramatic enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, bro. I think that I'm a champion for FMA Discussion because I believed in it from the beginning, continue to believe in it, and again, wouldn't want it to end. Tim Rivera, this is and should be a bias. FMA Discussion can't be everything to everyone.
That's true.
Other podcasts and discussion groups should cater to other biases. Yes. 1,000%. 1,000%. No, I agree with that.
We had our niche. What was our niche? Our niche was bringing notables on, despite their popularity, depending on who your affiliation with them, give them a chance to share what they do to a broader scope of the community, let them be heard, and that's our niche. You know what I mean? And to make a concerted effort to bring females and let them be heard, and
all that.
And we achieved that. I mean, how could you not say that we have not achieved that? Who else has brought as many females on the show as we have, or made that effort to bring them on?
No, I agree, and I think, again, sort of extrapolating from my experiences, creating multiple communities, right? From tactical to knife, to Filipino martial arts, to martial arts as a whole, and also helping build communities for specific individuals, right? Like Hoover, Mastro, Instructor Zero, like these guys, I helped, at least on the foundational phase, build their communities and to define really what these communities mean, or as Tim notes, these biases, right? These biases, preferences, styles. I think what's important for people to realize, and this is tough for any kind of an artist, is that artists evolve, communities evolve, organizations will pivot. And so where FMA Discussion started may not be where it is now. There's quick bits, there's this and that, there's offshoots. You should allow for an evolution, and that evolution could take on any number of forms. To maybe Dean Franco does an interview once a month. Maybe the forum becomes more of a Wild West, and you don't bother so much when people are.
I haven't gone in there in a month, so I don't know what's going on.
Don't. You know what I mean? I think there's some certain moderator tools that make life a little bit easier. Some people will take advantage, right? So I've also seen people on FMA Discussion who make zero contributions to the conversation and only use it as a marketing platform to post
100%. We know that.
Yeah. Right. So I think let's, kind of getting back to the roots. People ought to respect and show gratitude and appreciation for when FMA Discussion benefits them, but they should make contributions to the group, right? Sometimes I feel like I overshare, bro. Like this is my fight, and this is what I discovered.
But I'm happy to do it, and as well as others, But much your point of like, this kind of came up. I was meeting with a couple guys, and this kind of came up, and then one of the things that kind of came up was like, their time. I mean, well, let's be honest. FMA Discussion's been used, and when I say that,
should be used.
Yeah, right. And I say that now. Let's look. Okay, so let's look at the word being used. Okay, now we're happy with that. Okay, if it benefited you, it got you exposure. You got your seminar going through there, and people came to it, attended it. Off that, you got some classes going, and you got some students. The thing is, just don't. Be a little thankful and appreciative. people just, that's the one aspect where people, that's getting lost. And you know what? And the thing is, I guess it's hard to put expectations on a general community. In other words, when somebody does something for me, like, you know how gracious I am and grateful when somebody does something to me. Like, I'm incredibly appreciative that you would take time and you would do something for me when God knows you could do whatever else like that. But that's just me. And sometimes the mistake I make is I put that like, well, how come they're not doing what I do? And I have to recheck myself. I have to recheck myself all the time. Like, well, and then, the thing is, like my father told me years ago, if you're going to do something for somebody, do it, but don't expect anything in return. Do it because you just want to do it,
Bro, that's one of the greatest sources of unhappiness in people's lives. It's when their beliefs and ideologies and when their kindness isn't reciprocated. So you really got to do kind things for the sake of doing kind things and not with the expectation of somebody's going to return that favor. But I understand the frustration, right? Because from your perspective, you've provided a lot of value to not just from your perspective. I think it's quite clear that you've provided a lot of value from the Filipino martial arts community. And when that's met with some kind of entitlement and wanting more from you, it's easy to really feel exhausted from that, right? Like, and here's the thing, at the beginning, right, I joked that everybody wants to talk to Daddy Dean and Daddy Dean will help resolve it. But being a father, as you know, as much as it's internally rewarding, it's one of the most thankless jobs out there, right? Like we don't really get credit.
Yeah. Like when I get in a car to go take him there, there's not a squeaky queue waiting there for me, a cupcake, right? So.
Yeah. So I think again, my advice, right? And guys listening out there, let me know if I'm completely offside from here, is that, Dean, you just need to do FMA discussions completely on your own terms. Quit listening to people, including me. Forget listening to me and just do what makes you happy, right? Because honestly, sometimes I think my advice is good, but it may not always be the best outcome or the most peaceful outcome. Because I'm all about just laying it out there. So if you got a problem with somebody, have a discussion with them. But then that could create more time vampire moments where it's just sucking energy and time.
Draining. And sometimes, sometimes, and I gotta be, depending on, again, not the what, the how, like how they go about it, how they do it. Sometimes it doesn't warrant it. I gotta be honest with you. If there was just complete disregard for ethics and respect and all that, you know what? Sometimes it doesn't even warrant.
And here's another piece of advice from somebody who spends a lot of time on social media, right? Gets a lot of flack because my inbox on my multiple social accounts are full, and sometimes I can't differentiate, because of profile pictures and names, somebody who's an actual friend of mine that I've met and I owe something to, like I owe them a phone call or an email or whatever. Sometimes I can't differentiate on first glance if it's a real friend, if it's a longtime friend, if it's, a business partnership that I've kind of handshake agreed to at a convention that I was. And so when I'm late in replying, or if I drop a conversation, people make something out of that, right? My advice to you is not every inquiry deserves your attention. And it's okay to ignore. It's okay to delete because you as a human being, right? You say hello to strangers. You're going on a hike, how's it going? Like you acknowledge people's presence, shallow and fleeting as it may be. It's part of being a good human being, right? We acknowledge somebody's presence, especially when they're going, "Oi, Dean." Yeah, you don't want to just ignore them. You can do that on social media. Oi, Dean Franco, halika, come here.
Oh my God.
Dean, come on, sandali lang, just a minute, Dean. Come on. I want to show you.
I have questions for you.
Right. So it's okay to post and ghost. It's okay to drop conversations without telling them why. Right. And this is advice for both sides of that party. Don't take it personal. I'm not ignoring you. right? It's just the nature of this whole thing, the social media.
Yeah.
It's time consuming, man.
It is. I mean, and people don't understand. And when you got like, you know, how distracting some things can be. Like when you have to deal, I would ignore him too, Brian. No, I'm just kidding. But like, you know, it takes away from like stuff you're really trying to achieve or you're working on, and then but you have to get in there and you have to deal with drama. You know what I mean? And it's like,
I get it.
That's the worst. And like, and where it could have been really avoided if somebody just took the time to communicate better or handle it better and started turning for attention, negative attention and drama.
Or even directly. Speaking about which, this freaking guy, this
Who's that?
Brian Kanata guy, he made a comment on one of my posts the other day. I read it and I was pissed off. I was like annoyed. Like, what the? I was showing this product. By the way, I'm going to plug a product. Stay tuned. I got a dope product for Filipino martial artists. I'm always plugging something. But this Brian Kanata, Southern Calis Americano guy, he commented, and I was like, what the frick? So I messaged him right away, sent him a screenshot, and I'm like, what the F is this about? And then we had he explained it, and I'm like, crap, what did I do? Right? So I was offended by a comment he made on my post. I messaged him right away. He explained.
Yeah.
What did I do? I just apologized.
Brian, but you know what though? Brian's somebody that you can have a mature and come to resolve like probably very easy and quickly. Some of these guys, they're so caught up in the id and the emotional aspect, or they just didn't fully mature, to be quite honest with you. Right. You can't. You know what I mean? You can't, because you got to get through all these layers before you can get to the core of the problem.
Oh, yeah. I mean? Yeah. And that's what I was talking about, right? Navigating through this thin veil of civility in FMA. With this guy and most of the people that I interact with, I see something that I'm like, are you dissing me, bro? I'm like, let's talk about this. And they're like, no, I wasn't dissing you. You read that the wrong way. You're being an idiot, Paulo. And I will be like, oh, I'm sorry. I was emotional and irrational and with no excuses whatsoever.
Right.
I'm sorry. My bad.
Yeah. I mean,
it's
right. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, like it's kind of a fine, but yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, let's go. Let's talk about things that are coming up. Dean, you got a really interesting digital seminar with Marko Novakovic, somebody who I've had tons of disagreements with.
I know, but you guys have always come around back full circle. And
I don't always like what he says or the way he says it.
But
for sure the same with me. But hey, I'm in full support of this because I think what you guys are going to cover is actually good stuff. You know,
I hope so. It's not like I've been put years and dedication and failures and just overall misery in this aspect of the art.
Yeah. What were the specific? I think it's 2-on-1, right? You guys must be doing.
Yeah, I mean, grappling, but yeah, the 2-on-1 is definitely going to come out from the grappling. I'm going to show some stuff. He's going to be more concentrating on the ground. I'm definitely going to show a couple ground things. So definitely you're in it. I mean, whether it's stand up clinch and went to the ground, or God forbid you were on the ground, you felt the ground, somebody got on your guard, you're showing some skill. Now this guy goes to draw, stuff around that nature.
Yeah. You know what I found with knife work on the ground is that you really need to be able to teach it well. You really need to be efficient and almost get rid of the before, right? Like, how did we get here? Because you can spend a whole lot of time navigating how we got to the ground.
Yeah.
And when on the ground, it's such a frenzy. It's nothing. It's a little bit like rolling, right? Obviously, the same principles apply, but the hierarchy of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu completely changes.
Yeah.
You can't afford to go through that hierarchy.
No. And the thing to me is, it's pretty simple. It's either you were containing the draw, you were monitoring hands, you were able to somewhat kind of get trained before it starts moving. And if it didn't happen, you're looking at damage control. I got to be honest with you, because when you're down there is just so much real estate you got to cover, and you think, well, I'm going to stop him in midair flight, and I'm going to pull his arm over here. I mean, it's not going to happen.
You know, my contribution to knife work on the ground, you know, the Bladed Grappler series with Eli Knight and Coach Greg Nelson, I learned a lot from them. And of course, my work with Sal Mascoli, you know, United States Marine, longtime defensive tactics instructor in Vegas. Gary Dre. I work with a lot of guys who do knife on ground material, and where I've focused my specialty, right? Because it's difficult, like it sucks.
It's yeah, it really is. If you're doing it, yeah.
My study is based upon circumventing classical jujitsu tendencies, right? So if and just showing that, right? If I roll with a knife with a jujitsu black belt, I'm eventually going to get wrapped up and submitted, right? But I've come up with certain strategies that circumvent what I think they're going to do based on consistent practice and my understanding of the philosophies of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So I give them puzzles. That's all I am. I'm a puzzle maker. Like, what if I turtle and you can't see? What if we end up in this position, right? You know, like if you have me wrapped using your legs, what can I do? Or what should you know based on my blade orientation so you avoid femoral cuts? Where are they? Where are they shallow? So I'm not an expert at it, but I can.
You know, but to me, it's getting in there, you're putting in the time, and what keeps repeating itself. You know, what keeps coming out, what keeps, but you know, much to your point, it's miserable. It's not easy. There's failures. I mean, and I'm going to tell you something, my grappling went from here. Now I include weapons, everything to like here. Because I'm just monitoring your hands, man. I'm like, man, what are your hands doing? Like, you know, and because when that thing gets out, man, and you got covered real estate, you better you know what I mean? It's just a dynamic, and you stopping from that touching you in that close proximity is just so difficult. So difficult.
Oh, Dean, you know what? I totally forgot that I gotta go. Oh, I'm good. Okay, they come for, okay, never mind. No, I was supposed to take.
In a couple of minutes, I gotta take my son. So yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I gotta take people to boxing and jiu-jitsu. But anyway, how do people? Oh wait, we were talking about ground grappling, blah 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 blah. How I'm not really good at it, but I can provide puzzles.
Yeah.
How do people register for that? I think you guys should if you guys are listening right now, Dean and Marco are doing what I predict to be a pretty phenomenal Zoom session. How do people?
So the best thing to do is have them Facebook message me, and then I can give them the instructions for PayPal. That's probably the best way.
Okay.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, man.
You didn't have to, you know, obviously you didn't have to do that.
No. See, again, it's one of those things where I think it's actually going to be a great session. So
I think so. I mean, we've done it before, me and him, and people enjoyed it. They enjoyed the content. They enjoyed our approach and how we weren't trying to sell them fairy tale stuff and how we. Yeah.
I'm curious about your methodologies, both of your methodologies in that platform, because really ground grappling with a knife requires time and consistency, right? And putting yourself in positions after.
I finally got like solidified from mount. Like the best thing to do, somebody's got your mount after just years. Finally, just one thing keeps coming out, and it's like just so happy. Knee shield? What's that?
Knee shield with a control.
So somebody's got me in mount. Like obviously you screwed up, man. You got taken down, you got put in mount, and a weapon came out. Like you just did nothing right up to that point. Yeah. So they got you in mount, and they're yeah. So what would you do?
And they're wailing away.
Well, they're about to. I mean, they draw out and they're like right here. What would you do?
I think big hubad motions that isolate that weapon-bearing limb. If you got to open up your guard, right?
Yeah, but how do you? Yeah, but you're not in guard. They got you a mount. Yeah, we're going.
Oh,
they
mounted.
Got you a mount.
On
the ground. They got me a mount. They pulled a knife out.
Yeah. So okay, honestly, if they posture up and they got you on mount, they really haven't got a bunch of control on you. So you're bucking like a wild man. You're getting 2-on-1 control, and you're extending it, and you're stretching.
Okay, bucking. What are you bucking to get them off you? You're on the right track. What are you bucking? How do you bucking to get them off you?
You buck. You get your
Nah,
hip
but if you
up.
hit it, they can ride it out. They can ride it out like a wave. What do you get them to make sure where they have to take that arm and brace out?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to disbalance them in such a
Yes,
way.
but what
they have
does
to
it?
make them
No,
fall.
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But
Yeah.
what type of escape does that best? Putting your knee where?
So they're mounted. They've
They're
mounted.
on me. Yeah.
I don't understand the question because you buck and then you get your hip.
They're taking my knee, their tailbone, and bucking with my knee. That really forces that. If I bridge with my hip,
Oh,
they can ride it out.
sure. You mean here?
Yes.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
forces them to really do this. If I
Yes.
just buck with my hips,
Yeah.
they can kind of ride it out like a wave.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's just a reinforcement and it's directing where they go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
All the
100%.
above. All the above. All the above.
100%. All right.
Yeah.
So I got a product. Let me plug this before you go.
Yeah, I got to take him now. But I want to thank you so much for bringing me on. I really appreciate it. No,
Right,
but no,
Dean.
thank you so much. Always humble and honored. Obviously, you didn't have to do this, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Happy to do it, Dean. Go
All
do
right,
that.
we'll be in touch. And tell your
Yeah.
uncle I really like to have him come back on the show. Speaking
I
of
will.
MMA discussions.
Daddy Dean Franco, everybody. Thank you, brother.
All right, guys, take care.
Take care. All right. So here's this product that I wanted to plug. It is called the Vector Ball, right? It's got to do with visual cognitive training, which the jury is out. I'm not saying this kind of training, similar training modalities are replacements, right? Like the best training that you can ever do for anything are, near transfer training, where the training modality as closely as possible mimics the application. But something like this is really cool. So it's quite a robust ball. And when you bounce it, it pulses a color randomly between these three colors. There. Green, blue, red, blue, green, green. So it's random, right? So how can we utilize this into solo training effectively? One is if the motions that you do are one-to-one with the application. For simplicity's sake, let's say the application is stick sparring or knife sparring combat sport, then you would suspend this somehow, hit it, and each color would correspond to a specific kind of strike. So it's really because the human brain, it's hardwired to look for, patterns. When you have in solo training something that can disrupt mid-computation your prediction, and when you have to think about a corresponding action based on that stimulus, you can create a whole bunch of really cool drills. So go visit ionballinc.com. It's called the Vector Ball. Use the promo code GN. You get $10. I get $10. I look like a cool guy. And I this is just part of how I make money. But I fully support the idea of visual cognitive training. If for nothing else, I'm sure you can come up with really interesting drills on your own. There's a whole community creating all sorts of weird and wonderful drills. And again, it's very hard to really quantify, especially in combat sports and things like that, what actual improvement it's going to make. But at the very least, what I know is that it's fun, it's engaging, and when you couple it with more standardized training, then you kind of create this like super interesting matrix. And it isn't like those balls, Mr. Brian Kanata, where you hit it and it just lights up a whole bunch of like different colors. This is a single color, randomized, and for that prescribed period of time. So what I did with this actually is I wrapped it in a standard kitchen garbage bag, which is white and semi-transparent. And what that allows me to do is to have it hanging into like a pendulum. And yeah, you can just whack it. So pendulum training, the science style guys are really awesome at it. I think this adds another dimension because it gives you these visual cues that can correspond with a specific action, right? So I hit it, boom, it turns red. Whenever it's red, I hit it with a downward strike. Hit it with a downward strike, it's blue. I hit it with a backhand strike. I hit it with a backhand strike, it turns red. Now I got to hit it with that downward strike again. There we go. So it doesn't, it's quite robust, right? Whoa, there you go. Yes, you put the ball in the sack. You put the ball in the sack, and then you hit the ball sack. Poutine and pistols at dawn. So anyway, yeah, there it is. I think it's really great. Yeah, check it out. I'm always looking for like interesting ways to have like meaningful solo practice, which can be really difficult in Filipino martial arts. Yeah, we can practice mechanics and we can do carenza with our imaginary shadow fighters all day long. But when you actually have disruptions to your thought process, which is like the opposite of flow, and you manufacture time constraints and cognitive loads in your solo practice, I think it becomes more meaningful. You know what I mean? So Vector Ball, use my promo code. It actually is, Brian, founded by a former member of the special operations community. So I'm always looking to support veteran-run companies, but just not necessarily for the sake of it. I think it's a freaking great product. Yeah, you can do all sorts of things. Like me and my daughter actually came up with a game where we would bounce it green, and we would incorporate colors with dance moves. So red would be like boop, green would be like a leg kick, and then when it turns blue, it would go ow. Anyway, that's the little game I came up with my daughter with this thing. But because it's randomized and because it's supremely modifiable, you come up with all sorts of really cool drills with this stuff. And you'd be supporting a veteran-owned company. So consider it. Don't want to do the hard sell so much, but I am developing a lot of drills with this stuff. Cognitive vision training is when unpredictable information is provided during a drill that provides instruction on what to do next. Very cool. All right. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed that the conversation with Dean. Again, like he has done a tremendous service for the Filipino martial arts community, you guys. I saw this dude, and to be honest, like I loved watching Dean's sincerity, and part of that was like watching him struggle. Right, like I really enjoyed, Dean struggle through like sensitive conversations and people's egos. It's kind of like I don't know what it is, but he always does it with such authenticity. And that was part of the allure for me with FMA Discussion. I also saw the fact that there was this guy who's just like supremely kind-hearted and really wanted to do great things for Filipino martial arts. And I thought that's the guy to do it, right? I'm not the guy for that. I carry my own biases. I can be divisive. I can be blunt. I can be emotional, sometimes irrational. So to have somebody like Dean Franco, who's for the most part calm and level-headed, be at the forefront of pushing as many different Filipino martial arts systems out there to an active and growing audience, I think that's a tremendous, tremendous value. And what I really wanted for Dean to realize during this interview, one is what kind of a contribution that he's made. Two, that people aren't entitled to his time. We're not entitled to Dean Franco's time. We are not entitled to Dean Franco's attention. We're not entitled to Dean Franco's counsel. We're certainly not entitled to his platform. The good part about that is that if you don't like it, make your own podcast, do your own thing. But if you are going to utilize or get benefit from an outlet like FMA Discussion, respect, courtesy, tactfulness goes a long way. Gratitude goes a long way. I don't think that Dean has made any money doing FMA Discussion. Certainly with the view earnings, he donates that back. So that's it. I wanted Dean to know that he can fully run FMA Discussion on his own, and completely under his own terms. And all of us who gain value from interacting with or being a part of FMA Discussion, we're just going to have to deal with that. Whatever Dean wants to do with it, he's going to do with it. But what we want is for Dean to continue doing it. Because if he stops, if we exhaust the man to the point of him not wanting to do it, then we are all not so better off. Well, what am I trying to say? What's the word? Like, if Dean leaves FMA Discussion and just completely shuts it down, we're not all fucked, right? But I mean, let's just say we're better off with a healthy and thriving FMA Discussion. Let's leave it at that. So, my people, what time is it? It's 5:00. Time to do some FMA, a little bit of boxing. Yeah, maybe some content creation. Thank you guys for your time. I super appreciate it. So yeah, just quick reminders. Go message Dean. This Sunday, he has what I predict to be a really great Zoom session with Marko Novakovic about knife defense on the ground. Check out this company and this product, support a veteran-owned organization, and have a bit of fun with your Filipino martial arts training. You guys can check me out on Instagram at GN_FunkerTactical. Every little bit of support helps, whether it's a like or a comment. I really value the engagement. Follow GN on Facebook. Donate to your local charities. You can go to church if that's your thing. Pray, be grateful, and just, express yourself, right? Like, we got a very short window of time to stake our claim and to leave a mark in Filipino martial arts. Do that fearlessly, right? And unapologetically authentic. And for all the gossip girls, fuck you. Just kidding. All right, guys. Leave me your parting comments as we play the dopest intro, outro in all of Filipino martial arts history.
Get the fuck out of bed, bitch. Go.
You're finished! No!
Get up. Get up. Gotta wake up, bitch. Get up.
Oh!
Get up. Get up.
Before it, launch the counterattack.
Oh!